Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Steffi, and I'm back from Europe. And if you're hearing some pounding on the house, they're replacing our roof right now because we had hail coming down on our house recently and it destroyed the entire roof. Well, anyways, let me ask you this question. Are you wondering how to delegate various tasks, ideally, absolutely everything, in your growing business, and these are tasks that only you know how to do? You have key responsibilities that you think you just cannot hand off to anyone on your team. And this is really what this video is about. I'm going to show you exactly how to delegate absolutely everything in your business, even the things that currently you can't, because let's face it, you're quite smart and experienced. But before we actually get into this, I want to talk to you about three things that are going to set you up for success in this conversation. And I'm going to give you the exact step-by-step process. All right. And I'm going to share a story with you along the way because I got to thinking how my recent trekking adventure in Nepal really ties into this conversation. So let's go. All right, so you're wondering how to, I'm assuming, delegate complex tasks that only you know how to do, right? And you have key responsibilities in your growing business that just seem impossible to hand off. Okay, so I'm going to give you a story first before we get into the step-by-step delegation process that allows you to hand off everything. See, I always wanted to go trek in the Himalayas. That's been a dream of mine since I was 15. And however, though, actually making that happen scared me. And then there's the cost, there's the time. And then as time goes on, you're sitting behind the computer a lot. So what about my fitness level? Can I still hack it? I just wasn't sure I could pull it off. But then something happened. Something prompted me to excavate that dream and make it happen because I realized whatever gnawing doubts I had were just self-imposed limits. And I got serious, I planned it, and finally I went. And, maybe this is a little bit analogous to what you're going through with, how can I get myself to the point where I can delegate difficult things that currently only I can do and that are chewing up my time and keeping me from maybe A, having more fun, having my life back, but also B, staying at the innovative edge. All right, so when I got to Nepal, it just was beautiful beyond words. And this little picture here is just one of the many, views that I enjoyed. This is actually Fishtail Mountain called Macha Putri Peak. But then look at this. We had trekked already for several days, many hours per day, and really pushing me to the edge of what I was feeling like I was capable of. And then we got to this. Oh my gosh. There were such steep rock steps all the way from my feet to the sky, the horizon. And you go like, holy moly, can I do this? And then I decided, man, I've come this far. I'm not going to turn around now. Besides, if I did, it'd be a long way back too. So I kept walking, and it's just one step at a time. And I even, when I got really exhausted, I would just count my steps. 1, 2, 3 to 20. And then again, 1, 2, 3 till 20. And then by the time I got to 100, I was clear. Hey, look down. I've made progress. So eventually, I made it to the Annapurna base camp. And Annapurna is, by the way, the eighth largest mountain. I, just to be clear, did not go on top of that mountain, but the base camp itself is at 4,130 meters. My husband, when I called him using Wi-Fi, said, "You're huffing and puffing a bit." Yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, the air is a little thinner here. Anyway, 13,550 feet. All right. Luckily, delegating the toughest tasks is not that hard. But I do have a couple of tips for you. Here I'm sitting in front of a tea house. It's like a mountain hut basically at the base camp of that Fishtail mountain I just showed you. Okay, so I have a question for you first though, namely, which task do you wish you could delegate, but you think you can't do it, at least not at the moment? All right, so my Nepal trek, as I told you, seemed also impossible until I broke it down into doable steps. And that's really the key that I want to lay close to your heart. Break it down into doable steps. I'm going to show you in a second how to do that. Okay, what obstacles have you faced when in the past you have tried to delegate some of the things that you concluded you couldn't delegate? So here I am actually at about 3,000 meters on a place called Poon Hill, which if the weather is good, you can oversee the Himalayas, and you can do that at sunrise, which we did. And we did have some cloud cover, but the views were still good. So researching costs, time, and other factors, that is what made my Nepal adventure really happen. All right. Then the other question is, who can support you? Initially, I was a little cocky because, in my youth, I went to the Alps and I did mountaineering there, and I never had anyone carry my backpack for me, no matter how heavy it was. But, for this adventure, I was luckily advised to get a guide, and we did. There were three of us, and our Nepal guide was really key. I can't even imagine what it would have been like had he not been there. So he took a lot of the load off and he guided us too. And so, it would be a lot of help. It would be help you a lot if you had some help, most of all, fresh eyes to support you rather than completely going alone. And I'll shed a little more light on in just a second why that's important. You see, here it is. You know way more, even more than you think you know. And that's exactly why teaching others without fresh eyes is so hard, because you tell them how to do something, but you might give them 5 steps, and in reality, there are 8. But those 3 steps that you didn't mention because you couldn't think of them. And you couldn't think of them because they're so second nature to you that it's impossible. You just can't think of them. And if you work with someone who provides fresh eyes and who's willing to ask a lot of questions, then you can unearth those. And I can, show you how you can get those fresh eyes without it costing you a bunch of money. Okay. So are you ready to delegate your toughest tasks? All right, here's how. First, you identify tasks that you think you cannot delegate right now. All right, write those down. Just jot them down real quick. And then next, you prioritize. You think about, okay, if this task was now delegatable, is that a word? Delegatable. If you can delegate that, what would the impact be? Financially or time-wise or both, who would it empower, etc. And then the next one and the next one. So go through the tasks that you've just written down and prioritize and pick the one that has either the highest ROI or maybe is the easiest place to start. Because really, just like with that staircase there that I showed you the picture of, if I hadn't taken the first step, I wouldn't have taken the second step. It's as simple as that. And we all know that, but it's good to remember. Okay, and then you explain it step by step to someone new. And you're going to mention probably those 5 steps, and that someone new is going to pull these additional steps out of you, or at least some of them. And we'll get into what happens if they don't pull all of them out of you at that stage. All right. So then, in the process of that, you will discover what you had missed. When you mentioned those 5 steps, in the process of talking with someone new, they're going to pull a 6th step out of you, a 7th step, etc. you begin to realize how many things you do automatically. And this is, what we're pulling out of you. I call that brilliance because it's expertise and experience and even wisdom that comes from many, many years of doing what you're doing. And there's usually several things involved, several disciplines. Let's say if you're in staffing, but you're in a specialty niche like low voltage installations, well, you know something about staffing a lot, and you know a lot about low voltage installations. Or if you're in software and the software is used for legislative drafting, that's drafting of legislation, laws and regulations, then you know a lot about both. And usually at the interface of those different fields, that's where there's a lot of knowledge that goes really deep, and it's next to impossible. I'd say it actually is impossible to think of all of that in one go. And so by working with someone who has fresh eyes, ask a lot of questions, you will discover what in the first round you missed. And that's because of that, fact that you have conscious knowledge and unconscious knowledge. The unconscious knowledge you use automatically. Okay, let's go forward. Then you capture it. So when you see there's something you didn't think of before, can you write it down? Can you record a quick video? And get help if you don't have time. I mean, maybe the person with the fresh eyes can write it down for you. All right, so next up, it's really good to simplify, because you know so much that when you teach someone, it's likely for the other person like trying to drink from a fire hose instead of a garden hose or a trickle hose. And it's just overwhelming, and you just blast them away. And imagine someone doing that to you. So simplifying is very key in delegating everything. And the fact that we often experience limitations in what we can delegate often has to do with not giving a proper introduction, not giving enough context, and not simplifying enough. Because you can simplify and then build it up from there. But if it's too complex to start with, it just goes over the head of people. So a good graphic, a flowchart, a checklist, all of those go a long ways to actually make this relatable to people. I mean, I recently heard someone tell a story about, how you give an equation to describe gravity. And, even though I'm a scientist, as he was reading this, my eyes were glazing over. And then he said, well, compare that to saying, hey, I'm throwing an apple in the air, and what goes up must go down, and that is gravity. So many times we don't think about the simple ways to explain something. And again, working with someone who understands that is very useful. Okay, and then here's the other part. So let's say this process that you're trying to delegate does involve 8 steps, as an example, and you can think of 5. And then as you work with someone, you get 2 more out, but there's still 1 missing. Well, the only way really that you're going to get to the real bottom of all of this is you have to use that extracted information and put it into use. So in other words, I encourage you to be willing to use it, make money with it, because remember we talked about the ROI of it, and that ROI better be not just 10%, but it be like big factors, 10 at least, and at least 5. I mean, you can't get this kind of return that you can get from mining your own brilliance, as I call it, pulling that unconscious knowledge out of you and making it shareable and putting into use. You can't get that usually in the stock market or any other sort of investment. That's why I refer to it as a knowledge transfer gold rush, right? When you realize just how much knowledge you have in your brain that you can actually get at, that you can actually delegate. So the key to it is to have the courage, rather than being perfectionist about it and say, well, I must extract all steps first before I even dare to test it. No, that's not going to work. You have to put these, let's say, seven steps to the test and discover, there's one more thing that we forgot that we need to pull out. And so make money while you test, while you refine your training material for that task. And that's so, so key. So one more thing. And I think this is excellent news, right? So here, while you're mining the gold, your brilliance, your knowledge in your brain, and also you can do that with your team members, by the way, you will get your life back. Not only will you grow your business and scale it, but you will get your life back. And of course, it's up to you to decide what you do with that extra time. Maybe you want to have more fun. Maybe you have a dream like go trekking in Nepal. I was gone for 3 weeks. That may not always be easy to do before you are in a position to actually delegate. And also, you may want to use that time for getting back to being creative and innovative, because so many times when we can't delegate effectively, we become the manager of all that knowledge that we have in our brain, and then we don't have enough time for being creative and innovative. We have to dish out this knowledge all the time and spoon feed people, and that's really tiring and it's frankly bad for your soul. Yeah. So, and it's not the highest use of your time, I would say. So, all right. I want to end with this question. What impossible task will you delegate first? Pick one, because I promise you, you can make it to the summit, and all you need to do is take that initial step. So the first step is decide what task is it. And I invite you to come to my free virtual Q&A where we will talk about that. We'll talk about the intersection of your unique knowledge that you cannot look up anywhere, which is really at the heart of what we're talking about here. The difficulty to delegate everything has to do, again, with that unconscious competence that you have. So, but we're talking about unearthing that and using that. And we also are going to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. How is this going to revolutionize our business? Is it scary? Is it exciting? How do you best use that? And talk about the intersection of that human intelligence that's unique to you and the power of AI. I'll see you there. Please drop some questions into the lines below here and get some dialogue going on this, as well as come to my Q&A. I'll see you there. Bye bye.